You have tuned into the BearDown Corner with your host, Sergeant Holio. Hey everybody, this is the BearDown Corner. I'm your host, Sergeant Holio. Let's get you caught up on Week 16 action, shall we? All right, Thursday night hosted the LA Rams going into Seattle Seahawks territory, where, my God, it was a battle. You had the Seahawks breaking down on defense. You had the Rams breaking down on defense. Kenneth Walker decided to go off for 100 yards, 1 touchdown, and then 3 catches and 64 yards to help lead the Seattle Seahawks with JSN's 8 catches, 96 yards, and 1 touchdown to a 38-37 overtime win. I was baffled. But I also understand why they went for 2 points in overtime. It's game or nothing at that point, right? No different if you do it in a regulation, right? At the end of the game, if you tie it, you decide, you know what, we're going to go for 2. But it paid off. Tight end caught it. Win for Seattle. They jump all the way to the number 1 seed now after that glorious win. Not without Matthew Stafford giving them hell, though, for almost 450 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. Puka Nacua had 12 catches of those for 225 and 2 touchdowns. So fantasy owners were very happy this week. Saturday featured 2 games, first being the Philadelphia Super Bowl champions winning against the Washington Commanders 29-18 in just a subpar decimating of the Commanders at this point in the season. They're not much of a team. Barkley ran for 132 yards on them on 20 plus attempts and a touchdown. So, you know what? Philly's moving along with a nice easy win, but I think against legitimate teams, that's a whole other story. So we'll see what happens for them in the playoffs as they clinch the division this week. All right, Green Bay came into Chicago where, you know what? My God, I had about at least 6 heart attacks on Saturday. It was back and forth. I was swearing at my phone. I was going up and down about it. Like, I couldn't believe it. We were being stumped by the backup quarterback of Green Bay up until the final minutes of the 4th quarter, when suddenly DJ Moore, who had been quiet all game, goes off for multiple catches and 2 tutties. 1 tutty, and that was in overtime when he caught a nice 50-plus yarder from Caleb Williams, who had 250 yards and 2 touchdowns as the day, as Chicago wins 22-16. We also clinched a playoff spot over the weekend, and we'll tell you why as we talk about other games later. But honestly, just a great overall performance. I'm very proud of this team. Scared me a little bit. It scared me a little bit, but hey, you know what? That's all right, because that's part of being a Chicago fan, right? You're either going to have the games where you win them like that, or you get blown out. So I'll take the wins all day long, baby. All right. Moving along, Buffalo went into Cleveland where they took care of business. James Cook with 117 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns as Buffalo wins 23-20. Cleveland kept Josh Allen in check, gave the team itself a run for its money, but it was to no avail. The Buffalo Bills are back in the playoffs as well, and we'll tell you why. New York Jets go into New Orleans, where Saints fans, you know what? Tyler Shaw looked good on Sunday as far as things like the highlights I caught of him. There's also an interesting fact on this one. So he went for 308, 1 touchdown, right? Chris Olave had 10 catches for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. The other pass came from backup tight end / quarterback Taysom Hill and running back, the utility man. New Orleans wins 29-6 New York. LA Chargers went into Dallas where they faced the Cowboys and handled business with Justin Herbert throwing for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns on 23 of 29 attempts. Rashad Perriman, linebacker, number 6, right? Got a 2-game suspension as well. A illegal hit head-to-head on defenseless Fournier, wide receiver of the Cowboys. He's banned for the last 2 games of the season. He was also suspended in 2023 for 3 games for continued violations of this same issue. The man has to get it together. He's an 11-year veteran. Like, come on. You serious? You're being paid millions of dollars to play a game that only so many few of us can play at that elite level, and you're making an ass of yourself by not taking care of the other players. I get tackling, but we're trying to make a little bit safer this day and age. LA wins 34-17 in the final, knocking Dallas out of the playoffs, and that is what clinched Philly their division title. Now, Kansas City went into Tennessee, where, you know what? Let's give Tennessee a round of applause. They handled business. Cam Ward went 21 of 28, 228, and 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard rushed for over 100-plus yards on the day, and they took care of business and got their 3rd win of the season. Now, Kansas City was without Patrick Mahomes. You know, he tore his ACL, all that last week. Out for the season now, but they were already out of the playoffs. So, a weird time in Kansas City, right? First time in many years, 10 years plus years, that they have been in the playoffs and in the championship games and all of that, but no more. Tampa Bay went into Carolina, where the Panthers took care of business 23-20 in a nail-biter that was back and forth with just a grinded-out football game. And I will give Bryce Young credit on 21 of 32 for 191 and 2 touchdowns. He spread the ball around. He got his playmakers involved. They did enough to win the game. And that's all that matters at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, as long as you win, you got your fantasy guys wanting stats, but at the end of the day, as long as the team wins, they don't care. New York Giants hosted the Minnesota Vikings, where J.J. McCarthy ran in a touchdown, and with the help of Will Reichert and that Minnesota defense holding Jackson Dart to literally like pedestrian under 20-yard numbers, like it was garbage. Minnesota wins 16-13 in the battle of the kickers. Cincinnati went into Miami, where Joe Burrow had himself a day, throwing for 309 yards on 4 touchdowns with 25 of 32 attempts completed. Afternoon games from the Sunday slate had the Jacksonville Jaguars in Denver, where, you know what? Denver may have some holes, and Jacksonville exploited them. Trevor Lawrence went for 3 touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown, accumulating for 4 total on the day. 279 yards. Parker Washington had 145 of them, 6 catches, 1 touchdown. Jacksonville they just beat the number 1 team in the AFC, keeping their playoff hopes and the number 1 seed alive. They're in playoffs now. But this win not only secured that, but if Denver loses and Jacksonville wins out, they become the number 1 seed. That's crazy. There's coming a lot down the line in the next few weeks. Week 17 is going to be crucial, obviously, for a lot of these scenarios, but I got to give him credit. Liam Cohen, my man, you turned a franchise. The man coaching in his first year is just shy of having, in the next few years, the all-time wins record for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's an insane stat. But when you don't keep the head coach more than a few years, kind of hard to do. Atlanta goes into Arizona where they pick up the win 26-19, and Bijan Robinson had himself a day with 16 attempts and 76 yards on the ground. Added, he was the leading receiver as well with 7 catches on 92 yards and a touchdown. Las Vegas Raiders went into Houston where Houston was trying to stay hot. But I tell you, there's nothing hot about their offense. As honestly, thank God they have a defense and a kicker, man. They do just enough to move the ball and get stumped in between that 20 and 30. And Kymie Fairbairn with his 3 kicks and the first touchdown of the game was a Derek Stingley return interception touchdown for 6. They got to get something figured out on offense because Nico Collins is a great receiver, but he can't do it all when they're going to triple cover him. CJ Stroud has to start finding his underneaths, his second guys, on a more consistent basis. But they still win, 23-21, moving to 10-5, getting ready for the final 2 weeks where they hope to clinch, and realistically, I think they still have a shot at division, in all fairness. So we'll see what happens. Pittsburgh went into Detroit where this was a crucial game, where if the Lions lost, we made playoffs, which, like we divulged earlier, we are in the playoffs. So yes, Detroit, you know what? Hard-fought battle. 24-29 the final. Pittsburgh is your winner. And the running backs, we got to give some credit to these running backs. They are keeping this offense afloat. I love the other stuff that they're trying to incorporate and everything else, but these running backs really do make this offense. Aaron Rodgers looks good back there, but if it weren't for these guys, I don't think they wouldn't as much. Kenneth Gainwell had 5 catches, 78 yards, and 1 touchdown. The touchdown he caught, it was an act of God. That thing bounced off the proper spot on his fucking hand, man. And woohoo! With the other hand, he used his talent, brought it in. Alonso didn't even touch the fucking guy. The safety didn't even look his way. He just ran it in. Because they thought it was a penalty flag or it was incomplete, but it was not. Video review showed otherwise. And that's just Kenneth Gainwell. Jalen Ward, he had himself a day. 14 attempts, 143 yards, and 2 tutties on the day. And both those touchdowns were long breaks as well, by the way. So, this guy's a home run hitter. If he finds that hole, he's freaking gone, man. He is gone. New England went into Baltimore where the Ravens were trying to keep their playoff hopes alive with Pittsburgh winning. And you know what? New England did them a favor by defeating the Baltimore Ravens 28-24 with Drake May, who went 31 of 44 for 380 yards and 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. The kid drove the game as needed, when needed, at the appropriate times. Lamar Jackson also got hurt in this game. He's listed day-to-day with a significant back contusion. So let's just say his season's done, right? Even if you win out against Pittsburgh in the finale, win next week, Pittsburgh loses, Pittsburgh has Cleveland this weekend. So let's get real. I know Cleveland can upset. They have the defense to do it. Offensively, they're figuring themselves out. But in all fairness, Pittsburgh should win this weekend and just finish the AFC North. You just need to shut Lamar Jackson down at this point. He's already been injured this season. He's 6-6 on the year. But the man is having to still do what he did in his early 20s because you just haven't changed the system. And this causes an issue for the running quarterbacks because eventually you break down. Now, Lamar has the tools to play in the pocket. He's a pocket passer. He is. But he still has to run too much. And that's a problem. But anyway, Baltimore needs to win out. Pittsburgh needs to lose and then lose again to Baltimore in the season finale. Monday Nighter had the 49ers going into Indianapolis, where Phillip Rivers, old balls, 44, grandpa, was trying to lead them, and boy, he struck early and he struck fast. But then 49ers started battling back, and they showed why they are the team that has surprised a lot of people, with Christian McCaffrey doing voodoo magic to keep himself injury-free this year. He's having himself a hell of a year, but 117 on the ground, 6 catches, 29 yards, but 2 touchdowns in the end zone. Brock Purdy had 5 touchdowns on this day where they won 48-27. And man, Indy, you had a Cinderella story going, my team. You really did. I don't think you have enough to finish the next 2 games and freaking run it out. And even at that, you need a lot of help. You need Houston to lose their next 2. So at 8-7 and 10-5, that is their only hope to make it into the playoffs. Now, Houston wins next week, they're in the playoffs. They're not just looking at playoffs, they want division. But I think Jaguars are going to run the table, though. They actually have Indy in one of those games next week. Ah! Yeah, so those are your results for this week's NFL scores. And in news, we reported on the Chargers Perryman and the Lamar Jackson injury. Now, we have a few, just a few other notes here. Judkins suffered a serious dislocated ankle and fractured fibula. He's out for the year now. Kansas City, here's the first story. They are gone as of 2031. Not far, though. They're just going from Missouri to Kansas as they go to the new high-tech facility being built for them in this grand relocation, which isn't very far. They're still going to be the Chiefs. They're just moving across state line. And, yeah, going to try and make the Chiefs a high state-of-the-art team. By then, Andy Reid should be gone. Mahomes is probably close to, or maybe even retired by then. Because, he's 30. Maybe he decides to call it at 35 like a lot of quarterbacks have. If he decides to play the next 10 years plus, you know what? Kudos to him. Chase the rings. Chase the records. I wouldn't be there to stop you anyway. You're going to do it. If you do. But if not, this could be a rebuilding team by then. Let's just keep that in mind. But yeah, Lamar Hunt and the rest of that organization, the Hunt family is decided to pack the bags and go across state lines. So Missouri has now missed out on 2 NFL franchises in the last few years as the Rams moved to Los Angeles, if let's not forget that. And in the top story of the night, of the day, DK Metcalf gets a 2-game suspension. All right, there's different points to this, so let's break it down. He should not have hit the fan, first and foremost. He took a swing at the guy. Now, in his defense, he's saying that the guy was, uttering the N-word, the C-word, saying shit about his mom, all that shit. But either way, you are an NFL professional. This guy needs to be dealt with. Now, here's the problem I have. Why is this guy still at Detroit games when he's been reported 3 times by DK Metcalf? Or at least once, as reported by a source out of ESPN that confirmed on these, as Seahawks played there in 2022, 2023, and 2024. He's had issues with this guy on other occasions as well. Every one of those times, most likely. Why hasn't this guy been dealt with if that's the case? Or is it DK Metcalf is the real problem? I know DK Metcalf is a hothead. He's a diva. He's like an Ocho Cinco, but just worse these days. At least Ocho Cinco had class. But DK needs to get his shit in line, because if this 2-game suspension, he's appealing it, if it's upheld though, the Steelers can void 2 years worth of the guaranteed money. He can still earn all his money, but none of it's guaranteed. Be released tomorrow if they wanted, without an issue in sight, and just say, fuck it, get rid of the problem, right? They gave him a 4-year contract extension for a reason, because he is talented. You can't do this shit, dude. So get yourself in line. Let the proper authorities, whether, you know what, go to the NFL then. And let them know this guy has a history and he should be dealt with. But if he hasn't been dealt with, I'm guessing there's a reason, because you probably lipped him off first. Or you started doing the back and forth jaunter. He said some things you didn't like, and then you got all pissed off. Either way, you gotta keep it in line, bud. And you know what? That's okay. Because we're all humans and we all make mistakes. And DK, you take care of yourself, as hopefully your team makes the playoffs, which I'm thinking they're gonna, and you gotta play in the wild card round. Unless, you know, maybe Mike Tomlin's like, hey, you're not going to play the first half. Just as part of, you know, I hope you really think about what you've done. He probably won't, though. Let's be realistic. And as we will report to finish the show, the standings of the current AFC and NFC. You got the Denver Broncos at 12-3. They run the next 2 games. They lock it. New England needs 1 loss and to win out. Same with Jacksonville. Pittsburgh's open on division. LA and Buffalo. So 5 teams in the AFC are locked. Denver, New England, Jacksonville, right? Division leaders. LA and Buffalo are in because of the Indy loss. Houston is the only hope for Indy in any regard. Otherwise, you're probably looking at your AFC playoff teams, realistically. In the NFC, it goes Seattle at 12-3, number 1 seed. The Bears do still have a shot at number 1. They win out and Seattle loses 1 game. We can clinch number 1 seed for the playoffs. Bears at 11-4. Let's keep that miracle season going, baby. Philadelphia, Super Bowl champion, defending 10-5. Division winners, probably going to be locked in at the 3rd seed. Play the winner of Tampa, Carolina, basically at this point. It's a fucking merry-go-round in the NFC South. 49ers at 11-4 and LA Rams at 11-4, both locked for the playoffs. Hoping for a Seahawks loss so they can try to recoup and regain the division lead. And Green Bay at 9-5-1 are the 7th seed. And the stupid thing is, if in a miracle world they win out, we lose out, they're still competing for the North. All because of that damn tie that they had with Dallas. But you know what? That's okay. I feel we're going to win out. I want that number 1. Damn it, I want 13 wins. Let's get 13 wins, boys. Let's do it. Detroit at 8-7. You need Green Bay to lose. So Green Bay loses next week, we clinch division anyway. Either way. Playoffs are amongst us. Things are tightening up. 2 weeks left. Get your belts up and tighten those pants, boys. It's playoff time. And that's going to do it for us here at the BearDown Corner. I'm Sergeant Holio. You can catch us every Tuesday at 6 o'clock General Mountain Time AM and 8 o'clock Eastern, anywhere you listen to your podcasts and YouTube. Take care, be safe, and we will see you next week. And a Merry Christmas to everyone.